Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. It is Tuesday afternoon, and I am delighted to be joined by the guys in the green rooms. Are they in the same room? I don't know. In fact, that looks more blue than green today. There's Lawrence Connolly.
That's a work in progress room, that one.
That looks like it. And obviously, Chris McElwain is here as well. We're here for an hour to talk all things Celtic. Gentlemen, we will be discussing the situation we find ourselves in with regards to the SFA. There has been moves afoot. Lawrence, what a season it would be if there was the crumbling of two dynasties, the royal family and the SFA. I mean,
yeah,
I can understand half the country would go into meltdown.
The SFA is a strange one, eh? They call up Brendan and things seem to be going a bit quiet, and then all of a sudden they had a referee stepping down.
Yeah,
entirely unrelated, I'm sure. You know, rumours of getting two outsiders in who would have the appearance of being impartial at least. Who would have thought you would need that in refereeing? Times they are changing.
Well, we were speaking during the last week or so, Chris, about Scottish football. I mean, you find yourself by default, by geographical default, in the league that you obviously have to play in. And there's a lot wrong with Scottish football, at the very root of Scottish football. We were talking about that over the last few days, but the one thing that really has come into focus is what's happening right now with regards to the Tynecastle situation, whereby they were called out. Brendan Rodgers very uncharacteristically called them out. And I say Brendan Rodgers, Celtic very uncharacteristically, called the authorities out. And you think to yourself, well, if you look back on the episodes following that game, Chris, we were saying, Acsom was actually saying, we really need to start holding these people to account, because get rid of the conspiracy and all that kind of stuff, right? Let's just talk facts here. And basically, they're not fit for purpose. They're incompetent as an organisation, as an association, as a refereeing body. And Celtic are strong enough to go toe-to-toe. And I just felt around about that time, and previously, and Lawrence and I have spoken about it for years now, that we really need to grow a set sometimes. And I think the time is now. Do you think these matters are unrelated, that the head of refereeing has done a bolt?
If they're unrelated, it's a hell of a coincidence.
Certainly is.
I would say, I mean, it certainly seems that it's a set of circumstances that's kind of starting to snowball a little bit here. And I think there is potential that this is a reaction. Now, is it a case of, as you've rightly put in the tagline, falling on the sword, or to put it another way, thrown as a bone? Maybe. Don't know. I think the big positive for me is something that we've been crying out for a long time. I mean, you just have to look at the socials. Every time we see some dubious decisions, where we see clear incompetence with referees or games, or even decisions relating to fixtures, things like that, the club is notable by its silence. We never seem to go to bat for the manager, for the players, for the fans. This time around seems a little bit different. It looks as though actually we're backing our manager, we're digging our heels in and saying, no, do you know what? There's something here that needs to be addressed. And yeah, for me, that hopefully this is seen as a bit of a catalyst, that we're not just going to lie down and be a bit docile about these kind of decisions now. We're actually going to fight our corner, whether we win or not, whether we actually see anything substantial coming out of this, or any real material changes. I mean, look, you'd have to be the most optimistic fan to believe that. And I've often been accused of that. But I think it's hopefully the first step in the club positioning itself as a force to be reckoned with, not just in terms of our league, but just as an organisation that says, all we want is fairness, we want transparency, we want decisions to be explained, and we want equal footing with our, well, I'll say all teams, but we're not talking about our nearest and dearest rivals, so that's my position. So yeah, I think this could be just part of a snowball effect. At least that's what I'm hoping. Or it could just be, how do we optically make this look good, and hopefully the noisy Celtic will go away.
It's one of these things, Lawrence, that the minute you start discussing it, the minute you've got a gripe, the minute you start pointing out that something has gone against your team, when it quite clearly has, anyone with a pair of eyes in their head can see when it has done. And last week, or a couple of weeks ago, when we were talking about it, was Patrick McGill, young Patrick, had said on the Wednesday show about Jockstein, if you're good enough, the referee doesn't matter. And I countered it with that other comment, that other quote from 1977. You put it out on the socials, and then there's a deluge. I think there was probably 750,000 people seeing a tweet, because the nuance of actually having a conversation is lost on the knuckle dragging element of that particular app. And I'm not talking about any of our own fans here, whereby they think that, oh, look at this is a conspiracy, you're pulling up a 50-year-old quote. No, I think what it is it's easy to romanticize about, oh, we were good enough and the referees didn't affect us. We won in spite of everything that was going on, and we're not going to get into all the different factors in that, Lawrence. We've spoken about it in great depth. We're talking about the here and now, and obviously the word is that Celtic are going in studs up on this, and they're going to, grab it by the throat and run it for as long as they possibly can. Really, turn the screws on the SFA for the incompetence that they've quite clearly shown, Lawrence.
Listen, this isn't about one-off decisions, in Jockstein's quote, if you're good enough, the referee doesn't matter. What else is he going to tell his players going out there? He's got to get them focused to win a game. But I think, Alan Morrison's baptised at a pattern of assistance. Yeah, Crawford Allen's the head, and there's remarkable runs without penalties being awarded against his favourite team. Now, if you're in charge of that body of men that seem to be unable to award a penalty against them, you need to be looking at it harder and why. Just saying, well, this just kind of defies any logic, especially once VAR had come in. Then, obviously it's all for, is it pastures new or new opportunities, whatever that means. But
hopefully not the head of recruitment at Celtic, Lawrence.
There should have been something proactive done about it. If you're an organisation...
His name's no Strachan or Lobel, there's no chance. Right, sorry.
But if these patterns get thrown up, you should be looking into it and doing something. Is it unconscious bias? Is it something else? You get decisions for against you in a game, but over the 4 years or so he was in charge, it's a terrible look, isn't it? And then you get certain referees that Brendan's called out, who seem to be famous for, keeping Rangers in a cup against Albion Rovers. I love it. It's not the second time Celtic have talked about this referee. I think last time he was stamping and kicking Celtic players with impunity. And even when it went to review, there didn't seem to be anything wrong with it. And you look at some of the decisions, you'll see him. I think the Hibs penalty against Rangers, where the boy tugs the Rangers player's waist nowhere near the ball. Not a lot on it. It's a definite penalty. And you saw Boyle going down against Rangers, and there's contact there from Goldson. It's but there's not enough. There's a definite different standard at play, and it's up to the SFA to do something about it. And you'd think the bookies would have an interest in it. It certainly must be hard for them, But we'll see what Celtic do about it. The times they have taken the SFA on, I think Hugh Dallas is left, Jim Farry's left.
Yep.
And this would appear to be the third time that they're going to do something. If it's two people coming in from outside, will that really change the men in the middle? You've got permanent VAR refs now, and I think one of the criteria would appear to be you've either got to have had a season ticket for Rangers or want a season ticket for Rangers. There's something just not right about that, isn't it? If I'm the SFA, I'd be approaching the Nordic countries, maybe Holland and Belgium, and say, let's get a VAR centre of excellence. Let's pool resources. We can get away with this appearance of bias. We can have foreign refs on VAR all the time. Having a look at this. Save a bit of money between them. Get a better quality of VAR. You get at least the appearance of impartiality. You're not going to say, could you see it come out, if you get rid of Celtic and Rangers supporting referees, there'd be no refs left. Well, yeah, but if you get rid of Rangers supporting refs, there'd only be 5% of refs left. That's another way of saying it, isn't it?
Well, so, the thing is, Lawrence, you've came up with a way of being able to pool in your resources with other associations, maybe with regards to similarly sized nations. But that's too far flung for anybody in Scottish football to even consider, because it's too good an idea, it's too forward thinking, and you know that they're just not going to do it. We've got a situation at the moment where we've got the cheapest version of VAR that you could possibly purchase. I mean, even now, it's ridiculous. There are occasions where you're looking at the lines, for example, and you were there when Peter Grant told us, Lawrence, that, you know, a pal of his was working down south, and he was telling him that you can increase the thickness or decrease the thickness of the lines depending on whether or not you want it to be an offside. And, you know, that kind of thing, when it can be manipulated like that, when you're putting it into the hands of people with definite unconscious or conscious bias, then you're going to get a disgruntled customer, the customer being the Scottish football fan who pays into this game. And also, you've got a professional sport and the referees are part-time, and that is just amateurish. It's as amateurish as the state of the Dundee pitch. It's as amateurish as the state of the away days and all the empty seats.
Listen, this Dundee pitch, I think, you know, we've had games called off in Scotland before.
We're getting an investigation, Lawrence.
All of a sudden, it's just a distraction. Oh, Dundee pitch, game called off, but, you know, after torrential rain in Scotland. It's not the first time, won't be the last time.
I know.
You know, it's... But what he's deflecting from here, you know, it's taking up a bit of space in the back page. Yeah, you're deflecting from the head of referee and stepping down. And, you know, you think the media have been pretty lacking in calling them to account. Listen, at least you think they've been investigating. He's off for new opportunities. What is the head of refereeing position come up in another country he's moving to? You know, what is it? There's only so many of those jobs in Scotland.
Yeah.
Is he just fed up with refereeing? You know, it's strange, especially after Brendan's comments. You know, where is their investigative journalism? What are they doing?
The big thing there, again, that I think that opens up a different type of discussion in this day and age, Lawrence, with regards to where we are in terms of broadcasting and media and what was called mainstream. Some people call it legacy media. And media can be something that has been well established for over 100 years in newspaper format who are struggling to turn digital, or it can be exactly what we're doing right now. And I think that there's brave enough people who are good journalistic investigators to dig away and cover these stories as well in a credible fashion. So I don't think we will ever rely now on getting those back page headlines again, Lawrence, when it comes to things like this. I think we need to discuss it. I think platforms like Acsom need to discuss it. And people will say, well, you've got your own biases. I'll tell you one thing, at least we hold our hands up, Chris, and say, aye, we're Celtic fans. Of course we do. But we try to be as balanced as possible on the subject.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, you can bet that there's fan forums for every team probably crying bias and crying about bad decisions. Look, end of the day, I'm only interested in our team and our club and decisions that I think either, you know, are positioned against us. Like I think I said the other day, you know, I'm sure there'll be an equivalent of me on one of the Rangers forums, you know, talking about, you know, refereeing poor performance or the fact that we're the tinfoil hat brigade, depending on, you know, where it goes. I'm fine with that. I can live with that. Look, refereeing's not an easy job, right? I think we can all acknowledge that. And you know, I'd never want to see any individual be targeted for reprisals or retaliation over a bloody football match. You know, it just shouldn't happen. These are guys with families and commitments and things like that. But you don't protect them by pretending poor performances don't happen. You don't protect them by deflecting away from poor performances. The way to address this problem is to be transparent about it. Acknowledge the fact that, look, referees are humans, they're going to get decisions wrong, but be transparent about the criteria for becoming a referee as well. You know, and maybe the only way you do that, as you say, is to make them full-time, have a professional body, leverage external resources, as Lawrence has pointed to. You know, VAR was supposed to come in to remove some of this scrutiny and some of this dubiety over decisions. It was supposed to add that layer of transparency. For me, it's as foggy and as, you know, as clouded as it was before, if not more so. You know, now we're not just questioning the guys on the park. We're questioning the guys sitting in a wee back office room like we're doing right now about whether or not have they thickened a line, have they adjusted some of the parameters. There's no transparency. And what's the need for the secrecy? Right? If this is supposed to bring impartiality, honesty, integrity to a football and function that's under that kind of scrutiny, how is being secret about it going to accomplish that? You know, be transparent, show the process, right? And by as a result of that, protect your referees from the abuse and the retaliation and the reprisals that unfortunately some members of every fan base, seem intent in doing. So yeah, look, I'm objective to the point of view where I think I can see the failings from a structural and organisational standpoint within referees. It boggles my mind how they just can't read the room in terms of, we're putting the crosshairs on ourselves. We're making ourselves a target. We're making ourselves look biased through, simply not being transparent or not being open or not actually even acknowledging that, yeah, you know what, guys, a referee made a bad decision. Here's what he thought he saw. Fair enough, we hold our hands up. We'll suspend that referee for a couple of games, base it on performance. But we don't do that. What we get is, you're paranoid, you guys are complaining, you're noisy, leave us alone, we know what we're doing. What do you guys know? You've never been a referee. Come on. It's what we're seeing on the pitch. So I do think organisationally, they need to take a long, hard look at themselves and say, okay, how do we make this process fairer? How do we make it transparent? How do we remove some of the scrutiny? Maybe they don't want to.
Well, some of the answers to that are really, really simple, because when you look at the fact that the part-time, that's one of the biggest issues. Now, that doesn't get rid of any kind of bias. However, what it means is that the incompetence can be worked on with regards to full-time referees. Then you get to the bias, and the bias, it's a suggestion that's been made time and time again. We seem very reluctant in this country to get anybody to declare an allegiance on that professional level. And why? Because every other country does it. And then that's where the bias comes in. So you've got incompetence on one side in that they're part-time. You've got the bias issue when they've not, declared their allegiance to a football club. And it's not as simple as just say, I support St Mirren. There needs to be a process at that stage. I've said it time and time again, whereby with regards to data protection, GDPR and all this kind of stuff, you will allow anybody to check your history. If you were to look back on the history, Celtic season ticket holders, you can see that Paul John Dykes, unfortunately named John Paul Dykes on the Celtic season ticket, has had a ticket since 1994-95, when Fergus took over and started doing things like putting an advert on at half-time during the World Cup final, Lawrence. You remember that? USA 94 and a Celtic season ticket advert pops up. So when you consider that, if I had gone down the route of trying to be a referee, and I was completely professional and trying my utmost not to be biased towards Celtic, it would be impossible if you're a Celtic fan your entire life, and that is what we're getting at here. So I think that you raise a good point as well, Chris. We're not. I certainly don't think it's acceptable for anybody to be under threat. I don't think it's acceptable for any threats to be made to any referees, and that has happened quite a few times in this country in recent times. So we're not about doing that. Give them a platform where that is less likely to happen. So, use that almost as a priority as well. Sorry, Lord.
For balance, we could ask the SFA, maybe you've got it right. Maybe this unconscious bias, you've got this training, it totally rules it out. Could you share this with the judiciary? Because so as they can take part in trials where they've got kind of personal interest. Could you share it with police, interview panels? Because it's common practice throughout the whole of society that people with a bias cannot be making decisions, or with an apparent bias or an apparent interest in it. But perhaps, the rest of society's got it wrong. The SFA maybe do have some marvellous training package that allows people to overcome this, and it's everybody else in society that's wrong as well as world football. And if that's the case, hats off to the SFA. I just wish they'd kind of share that with us.
Share it, you're right. I mean, even if anybody's had the misfortune of doing jury duty, for example, I say misfortune because it can be a grisly job. I mean, the reason you often sit there and get a pass is if you know any of the people in the dock, if you know anybody involved in the case, because there could well be an unconscious bias towards or against the individuals. So at the very base level, Lawrence, you're spot on, but at the very highest level, and I keep using this as an example with regards to the malicious prosecution case. Why was it maliciously prosecuted, Lawrence? It's now cost over £60 million of the taxpayers' hard-earned cash and payouts because it has been proven to be maliciously prosecuted. What was the motivation behind the people prosecuting it? Was it something to do with the fact that they had an allegiance to the club in question? Well, it's been proven that that is the case because obviously there were shareholders at Rangers Football Club. So these kind of things have to be stamped out in Scottish football before it can have any kind of credibility. And I think that in normal times you would look at it and say, well, this could be a watershed moment. This could be a real opportunity for change. But my massive doubt here, Chris, is that we've never seen Scottish football taking the opportunity to change, have we?
No, we haven't. Certainly not in my lifetime, and I'm not even sure it'll happen in my what I've got left in my lifetime. So, yeah, it always has that perception of us against them to an extent. And like maybe we're not the only club that thinks that, but certainly as a supporter of Celtic Football Club, it always feels like it's us against them. And the louder we shout, the more resistance we seem to face. It's them again. It's that lot. No happy with success. Things have been going well. Why are they complaining? You know, you're still winning leagues. You've won X amount of the last titles. You know, stop your moaning. But it's not about entitlement. It's not about, you know, trying to add to our success as such. It's about fairness and impartiality and transparency. It's about trying to get things done right, which will then benefit every member of the, of every team. It's about trying to put a progressive, modern football structure in place against an antiquated backdrop of, secret handshakes and backhander payments and corruption that has been proven, as we've pointed to in the past. Really improving the optics and actually, take us away from this kind of backwards wee country mentality that we seem to have from a football perspective. We're never going to improve if we kind of take an inward look, a bit of self-reflection and say, do you know what? There's a lot of stuff we don't get right. And maybe our approach to referees and officiating is one of the key elements of that.
Yeah, I mean, see the thing with Scottish football. Sorry, Lawrence?
Did you hear Craig Levein about it?
Yeah, Craig Levein's been pretty vocal about it over the years. I think, when you look at Scottish football and people call you tin pot and all this kind of stuff, the elements where I agree with them is the officialdom, the refereeing. I think, absolutely tin pot. The stadiums, the pitches, the away ticket allocation, tin pot every time. The fact that, we can't get decent broadcasting deals, the fact that we don't get decent sponsorship deals, that is playing into the barrel of these people who don't think we've got a good game up here. But the positives are, the supporter base that we've got in Scottish football is astonishing. It's massive. It's huge. It's well over supported when you compare it to other European countries of a similar population. And also producing footballers. We're still good at producing footballers. And, I'm always criticising Celtic's Youth Academy, Lawrence, but look, we can produce footballers. You've got a guy there over in Italy whose next move, Lewis Ferguson's going to be over 20 million quid, right? He was brought through the Hamilton Youth Academy before Aberdeen, and then you look at John McGinn. There's a story circulating this morning about the true story behind John McGinn no signing for Celtic. He came through at St Mirren, right? You've got Andy Robertson, who's obviously a key member, captain of the Scotland national team, and he earned his spurs very, very early on at Celtic at Queen's Park. Scotland can produce footballers. Scotland is a really passionate football supporting country. And these two things is what we should start building on. Yeah. We get all the other bits wrong, it would appear. And I just think I'm a massive critic of Scottish football, but I can also be an advocate of it because I think that we don't always shout from the rooftops the things that we do well. We do produce footballers. I just don't think Celtic do that so well. I even made the outlandish remark the other day, Lawrence, that Ronnie Dyle has been sacked at Club Bruges. Bring him in to run the academy. I mean, we're pumping 20-odd million pounds into Barrowfield. Get somebody who runs the show, who's got a track record of being a talent spotter and a football developer, because Ronnie is that guy, and give him the package and give him a plan.
Yeah, it'd be great to see Ronnie back. Unlucky not to win a treble. Jeez, it wasn't bad then. What was it?
It all comes back. It all comes back.
Referees. But it'd be brilliant seeing Ronnie back. Look, we're producing good players, and are we producing enough? I don't know. The league could do with being bigger. I think playing 4 times a season doesn't help. And it might say daft, but if there was some meaningless mid-table games for teams, they might be able to blood youngsters sooner. But yeah, we're definitely producing a decent enough level of player. I think the weird thing about VAR, I don't think we thought, what's the best way this could be done. It was more or less, how do we keep it amongst ourselves? Because let's be honest, there's a lot of nepotism in Scottish football, isn't there? And it's, how do we just keep this amongst ourselves? Andrew Dallas, for one, he's not fit to be a full-time referee. Luckily, just after that, they decided they were going to have full-time VAR refs that wouldn't require them to run about the pitch. Just by chance. You can go and use, was the job created for them? If it was, maybe that's the employers should look after their employees, but these guys aren't full-time employees. They get paid rather handsomely to referee football matches. For the SFA, you talk to guys like Chalky and why he's not involved in a Scotland setup and deciding what they want to do. We're talking about
too forward thinking, Lawrence. Ryan.
Craig Brown's idea to get football parts back out there. No, I don't know what the SFA spent on. It's they don't seem to have a vision for the game, do they? Within Scotland that doesn't involve junkets.
Did you say junket or drum kit?
Junkets, mate. I don't know why they'd have drums involved with football.
The thing is, Lawrence, we had Liam on last week talking about Japanese football's 100 years dossier. There was a plan, there was a master plan, and it was a 100 years dossier. I'd love to read it. I mean, I'd be here for quite some time. But before we move on to other matters, Lawrence, I've got to ask you, are you sitting in your bar at the moment?
In the bar, yes, mate. In the bar just now.
Have you named it? Because remember, that was a discussion.
Right. Still thinking, mate. Still thinking on a name. So I'll need to come up with one this week because I need to order the gold lettering for the mirror and the door.
Brilliant. And what have you got on tap at the moment?
Nothing on tap. So I'm thinking it's going to be Guinness or St Mungo I'm going to put on tap. So, but probably Guinness.
Right. And if we win a double, are we all allowed to come round wearing double denim to open the bar?
Without doubt. I mean, double denim. The Jota bar. Oh, what a goal that wasn't. You know what I mean? That camera didn't work. Everything comes back to the referees with Lawrence. It's brilliant. We could call it the double D bar, but then maybe Dermot Desmond.
That's going to be a very different kind of bar. Let's be honest.
That is a different type. Is it that type of bar? Maybe it is. I'm not sure. Big shout out, moving swiftly on. Just after Chris tries to chuck me under the bus. A German broadcaster got in touch with us. Now, my German's no great. I never took it after kind of like first 2 years at the high school. NDR Fernsehen, I think is how you pronounce it. They got in touch with us because they wanted to capture the atmosphere and the culture of the Celtic support in the week leading up to the famous Glasgow derby. And they're making a documentary about the fiercest football rivalries all over the globe. They've done the whole South American thing. And they're coming through to Glasgow. And they contacted Acsom and says, we really want to get stuck in about this. What would you suggest? And I said, well, back in the day, I'd have had you doing it at the Beards and all that kind of stuff before the game. And I said, but this, we've actually got an event coming up with Paddy McCourt, cult legends, right? The Derry Pelly. And it's in Gracie's, a Celtic Irish boozer in the heart of Glasgow. And it's about 3 days before the game. Why don't you come along? So they're coming along to feature Acsom, the Celtic support, and Paddy McCourt and Gracie's in their documentary. This German team are coming over. So it's great. It's a great opportunity for everybody to get involved and be caught in film for the rest of your days, regardless of your sobriety. So if you want to come along and be part of that night, there are still a few tickets available, and the link is underneath this video. I'm going to ask you guys, just supposing, right, that a lot of the chat is true, and Celtic are pushing for the audio in terms of the decisions that Brendan Rodgers was unhappy with at Tynecastle, Chris. And Celtic, within their rights, are saying, you know what, we're not happy with this. We want to understand how you got to that conclusion. Any chance you could share the audio with us? And then they've gone into the wee audio file and thought, wait a minute, that's been deleted accidentally. And they don't have it. They don't have the evidence, right? And then the head of referees, I'm just supposing I'm saying, right? The head of referee says, oh, well, I'm off ski. I'm not going to be put on the hook for this one. And he's away. Just supposing all that happened. That unfortunate sequence of events, Chris, what would happen next? Where would we be in Scottish football?
Well, you'd be setting a real precedent, wouldn't it?
I know that sounds like a fantasy, right? I know that there's no way that could happen, right? I get that, but let's just say it did.
I mean, listen, they went to the VAR office and find Kate Mills sitting there, right? That'll be the next part of the fantasy. But no, I think the danger, maybe the danger for the SFA's perspective is depending on what they found, right? But if we assume maybe, look, let's not look at the malicious or the deliberate element just yet. But let's say maybe through lack of diligence or no following due process, that the evidence that should be there is not there. Right? Maybe somebody didn't do their job, somebody didn't log what they should have logged, or it's not being recorded properly, or for whatever reason, right? We'll not speculate. But I think the danger for the SFA, if I try and jump into their shoes dangerously for a minute, is that there could be setting a real precedent here that we need transparency now. We need very clear regulation and we need transparency, because some of these challenges, and we've not been able to meet that challenge for whatever reason. Right, and maybe that's the reason that our head of refereeing has decided to up sticks and go, because he's ultimately maybe accountable for this failure, even if it wasn't him directly. So, if that was to happen, then I think you put the SFA into a position where they have to be held accountable for maintaining proper integrity, standards, evidence. I mean, this I'm kind of going more into business speak than football speak, but. Yeah, it would certainly put them in a hell of a position. And I know they're good at deflecting away. I know they're good at maybe riding the storm. I'm not sure you'd be able to ride a storm like this if that was found to be the case. And I tell you, I think it might be the one thing that puts a lot of support and a lot of weight behind Celtic from other clubs to say, well, okay, Celtic have maybe pulled the trigger on this, but actually. There's, we've all suffered for some of these decisions, this lack of transparency, this lack of, scrutiny and regulation. And therefore, we want change. We want to see change. I think it puts them into a position where they have to react. They have to react. They can't sit on this and say, sorry, boys, daft wee laddie there sitting in the VAR office forgot to press record on the video. Well, no, come on. You're a professional organisation. You know that you're under a lot of scrutiny. VAR has come in supposedly to improve all these elements of officialdom and refereeing. Mm-hmm. We've asked for a bit of insight or a bit of transparency into the process, and you can't provide it. It's not a great look. It's not a great look. And
as I say, we're only surmising. It's the what ifs.
Oh, completely theoretical.
Absolutely. Yeah. Lauren, what do you think?
How hard is it to delete a file completely? It's ridiculous.
No, it's difficult.
It's almost as if, I don't know, like the police saying, we've lost those hate crime stats, I accidentally deleted them. And people believe in that. It's almost as, what kind of place would that happen in?
Do you know, I'm not seeing the comments at the moment, but I can just imagine what somebody's joined the pod a bit late is probably saying, what are these guys on about? What's going on?
I'm just worried about the one.
Do you know what they should be doing? They should go and listen, what would perfect look like here? Impartial referees, above reproach, not only impartial, but seen to be impartial. Can we do this? How do we achieve this? And they don't seem to be at all interested in achieving impartial or the at least appearance of impartiality. Saying, look, we've got issues in Scotland. Look, most people do support either Celtic or Rangers. How do we get round that? Do we get foreign refs? Do we share with other organisations, or are we more transparent? Do we? Jesus, I don't know if it'd be entertaining for people to actually be able to hear what the refs are saying. It's not the Masons. It's not a secret. Surely they can hear. Perhaps the refs think it's the Masons. Perhaps they're confused, but it's not.
Do you know? I think there's one point there that's really important, is that every supporter I've ever met recognises that referees will make mistakes. Right? They're human beings. It's a fast-paced game, and they don't have sometimes the perspective we've got when we're watching it on TV or watching it in the stands. We get that mistakes will be made, right? It's just something that will happen. It doesn't matter how good or efficient a referee is, they will make mistakes. And sometimes mistakes will have bigger implications on a game than others. But most fans will be accepting of that. if there's transparency into how decisions are being made. See if we can get some insight into when a mistake's made, what the referee's thought process was there. Did he follow a set procedure? Did he follow a set series of parameters to make that decision? That then, even if they highlight an error, people can say, well, actually based on that, I can see what the referee was thinking. Fair enough, not happy about it, but it happened. This is a very idealistic viewpoint, right? But we can see what happens. I think you'd find the scrutiny and the pressure on referees would reduce substantially. But see this element of secrecy where referees made a decision, he doesn't have to justify it. Why not? I've got to justify. I can't make a decision without my wife's justification. Why the hell is a referee making a decision, that receives no scrutiny at all? It doesn't have to justify why he's making that decision. If you've got guidelines and rules and regulations, and we've heard, that they're difficult to interpret, maybe that's part of the problem. But why are we not being open and transparent about the decision-making process that led to decision rightly or wrongly? What are we hiding? The optics make it look like we're hiding something. That's the problem.
And we're not being paranoid. We are not being paranoid. Opinionated Glaswegian, the OG, wants to know what would the lines be on Lawrence's chalkboard behind him? What would the lines be? Who knows? He's right, though. It does look like that, and you've just rubbed it off, Lawrence. You've rubbed it off. I'm really keen to hear your thoughts.
You think it's missing some graffiti on the wall or something?
Well, you have been known to have graffiti on the wall previously, Lawrence Connolly. Danny Boy is also coming to your bar. Maybe you should invite him. Where are you from, Danny? Where are you from? Where are you based? Let us know. And if we win the double, we're having an Acsom double denim evening at Lawrence's as yet unnamed bar.
Yeah,
and we'll get the Guinness poured for Danny Boy, hopefully. Now, here's another one. Deleted accidentally. I write. No, you're right, Pat. We're trying to paint a picture here that is not going to be deemed paranoid, because you know what? As this materializes, it could actually bring change to this game, because it could blow up. And as Chris quite rightly said, you could be the club's second bottom of the league, and it could come down to the last game of the season, and a dreadful decision like what we've had at Tynecastle is what actually relegates your team. And then people lose their jobs, and there's cuts in that football side as they drop down to the Championship. We're not just talking about Celtic. We're talking about any club that gets this kind of decision against them. And the transparency that should actually be just normal to be able to go to them and say, right, what was the situation? How did you come to this conclusion? Brown Warrior, Jim Farry and Cadet wasn't an isolated situation. Neither was Ogilvy's part. In the EBT's debacle, he was conflicted. Lawrence and I, we could probably do a compilation of conversations we've had on both these matters, Lawrence. Maybe we should do that, actually. Joseph McGonigal, some imagination, PJ. I know. It's all fiction, of course, Joseph.
Listen, imagine you're Dundee United going for a European place and you have to go, I don't know, a away game, and you're getting goals scored for 40 yards, ruled offside, and then penalties not given, and opposition players not sent off.
No.
It'd be ridiculous, So, listen, all you're looking for is, what would be better now? You've got VAR, you've got audio. Jeez, could you even make a programme out of that? We're going to put the ref on. Hey, we pay you, but why don't you go on a Monday night? We'll have a round the refs. This is what we were thinking. This is what, we're applying this law, and this is what we saw. Well, they definitely get an audience for it. They get sponsors for it, maybe Specsavers, but, it's... the stuff out there the SFA could easily do. It's an education piece for run. They're saying they're not getting enough refs and they disproportionately come from one part of society. Well, put it out there and say, look, this is what it's like to be a ref. This is what you're going to get enjoyed as. Don't recruit on, as is rumoured, I don't know, buses go to a certain football ground. It's probably not the best place to recruit refs from.
The thing is, Lawrence, right, there was a wee snippet that was shared on the socials just last week. You'll remember the ex-footballer Paul Dickov. I think he made his name at Man City. And
he was talking about Mourinho at Largs.
He was talking about Mourinho. I remember Dickov being one of the guys who was in Craig Brown's under-16 team that got to the World Cup final in 1989. I went to the semi against Portugal at Tynecastle. Brian O'Neill scored the goal. Luis Figo was playing in the midfield for Portugal. So Scotland had a great side. Some real talented players in that side. Andy McLaren was part of the team as well. But Dickov was talking about how his first dealings with Mourinho was at Largs, where basically he was a hamper boy, they washed the kits and the boots, and basically done all the kind of stuff you would do as a ground staff boy, Lawrence. And Mourinho never forgot him. And that was basically the crux of the story, whereby they're in a tunnel years later, and he's playing, I think, Chelsea. Man City were playing Chelsea. Yeah.
No, was it Blackburn, maybe?
Blackburn, you're right.
Yes, Blackburn,
yeah.
Chelsea, wasn't it?
And he remembered them, and he was talking about the humility of the man. But one of the points I took from that story was humility. He's not really that humble, let's be honest. But he never forgot Paul Dickov as a young player, and he says to him, "I followed your career closely, etc." But the point I was going to make is the fact that Scotland, in terms of Largs and coaches and the courses, and from all over the world, people coming there, was a hotbed. It was the place to go to get your badges, Lawrence, and to be a renowned coach. How can we not do something similar with refereeing? How can we not have a similar setup, which is so well respected around the globe? Because if we can do it with coaching, surely you can do it with refereeing.
Yeah, you think you could do it with anything. You know, Stirling Uni's, I think, quite big for sport up here. No. Couldn't we Stirling Uni say, listen, what could we do together? There's got to be stuff there, mate. I reckon it'd make fascinating watching getting the refs on a Monday. Right, I'm going to explain what's happening here. What did you see? You even get the refs talking amongst themselves. Some going, come on, you gave a penalty for that at Ibrox? You kidding? You know, obviously I'm joking, but you know, it'd be a great program, mate, to watch. And you know, it might give all of us that go and watch the game a better understanding of the game.
Listen, I like it. I like it, right? I think content is king. When we go back to what we're talking about the media, it's all about content, right? And content is king. And as long as you don't do stuff that is deliberately trying to get, clickbaity stuff, then it's here to stay. And it's all about quality. I mean, what we're doing right now is a live stream. Acsom also creates fully produced video content once a week in our Wander Around Paradise, but also interviews, etc. And there's always concepts you're thinking that would work. So I absolutely get it. Once I don't think it would ever happen. However, releasing audio could, and then there could be a panel, Chris, talking about the release of the audio. Only when there's not been an appeal, of course. You would need to keep that private until any appeals have been heard. But I think if you release the audio to the paying public, the people who are investing their time and their money into the Scottish game, that would add to the transparency as well. And, the panel could say, actually, Chris got that wrong there. Remember the one recently where they got it wrong down in England?
Yeah.
And they released and you could see the process of how they got it wrong. Somebody wasn't listening and they'd already got it wrong. They'd reviewed the wrong bit of the passage of play. Why not just do that?
Yeah.
Increase the transparency.
Do you know the one thing that came for that example when I was listening to it is you heard the referees and you could almost hear the not quite the panic, but the regret in their voice. No, we know we've got that
messed
wrong.
Up.
We've done that wrong. And do you know what came across to me? I thought a really human response, right? Nobody is expecting referees to be 100% perfect all the time. It's an unrealistic expectation. But see, just hearing a referee or a couple of guys saying, "Oh no, Jim, we've got that wrong. I thought it was that, and I didn't look at the right." I didn't look at that and think, "Oh, a couple of morons." I was thinking, do you know what? I can remember a situation I've been in like that where I've ballsed something up and I've had to, basically face up to it and say, I got that wrong. Look, it means that you still have to maybe take the repercussions because your performance wasn't great. Maybe it means that you get slapped on the wrist, or you maybe get suspended for a game or whatever. And I mean, look, footballers make mistakes every single game. Managers make mistakes every single game. There's barely a public role in football where your mistakes aren't viewed and scrutinised and examined.
Yeah.
The referees in Scotland seem to be exempt from that, and I actually don't think it does them any favours. I don't think we're protecting our referees by doing it that way. Whereas in that case, the one down in England where it took them a long time to deliberate, and it was a deliberation process, and you heard that deliberation process, right? And it means that people like me and you can look at that and say, do you know what? It is a bit of a complex process. I'm not sure I fancy doing that. So you generate, I'm sure there's still going to be an element of frustration, but you generate a wee bit of sympathy with referees doing it that way. And I think that actually can be really important for us. would it ever completely remove the perception of unconscious bias or bias? No, of course not. It's Scotland. Look, it's what we live on, right? It's not going to change, right? It's in the culture. But I think what you do is you just alleviate some of the blatant suspicion around referees. And so that would be I would take a similar approach. I would actually make the referees aware that, look, your discussions and your decision-making process is going to be recorded. It is going to be subject to examination, and we're going to be transparent with the paying public and let them, and managers and players, by the way, hear this. And I think, one of the long-term benefits of that is I think you might see players and managers and referees associations coming together to say, okay, guys, from a player standpoint, we need to make sure that we understand how to follow the rules. But to do that, we need to make sure referees, you guys are interpreting the rules the right way so that we're all on the same page. And actually then what you get is a much more streamlined decision-making process where the players are more on board and managers are more on board and the referees are more on board. As I said, idealistic, absolutely. Unrealistic, probably. But that's what I would like to see.
Yeah, there's no reason why we can't do it. And we've got Danny Boy, same as the BBC, forget to take the lens cover off the 7-1 game. Yes, I don't remember that, of course, but I'm aware of it. Robert Little, I don't know why the SFA doesn't let us hear the audio. That's what we're talking about, Robert. And I think, unless there's an appeal and you get the understanding behind the fact that, right, we need to hold this back until the appeal's heard, for example, why not release the audio to the paying public? I mean,
why would you need to hold it back until an appeal's heard? That's the decision.
Because it's evidential.
But it's not going to change, are you? That's what
in any other walk of life, evidence would need to be held back. It couldn't be made public record, could it? So DB knew BR was stepping up to deflect. I don't think he was, We were talking about this other day. That game at Tynecastle, had it not gone the way that we know it did go, we're on a great run. Celtic are on a cracking run. I'm not saying we've been brilliant in every game. What's he deflecting from? The defeat. It wasn't a particularly bad performance. I'll always compare it to the defeat at Celtic Park, which was a bad performance. So I'm not quite sure he was deflecting. I think he stepped up, and I don't think it was a situation, Lawrence, where he knew he was going to get backed. I think he's done it, and he's put himself out there, and thankfully the club have backed him.
But listen, Young's boots high. You're going, everybody's thinking yellow. You've seen some challenges like that. It's not even a foul in Scotland. Penalty's just ridiculous. I think it speaks to Scottish football. They've actually got a rule that, a manager can't criticise a referee, couldn't suggest he's incompetent. What does it leave if it wasn't incompetence? That's the worrying thing. The SFA is saying it's impossible for them to be incompetent. Well, what is it? And it's not so much just that one game. You're looking at a large body of data saying there's something wrong here. And we need to get better. Or they should at least want to get better at it. It doesn't appear as if they do want to get better and make that change. And maybe that's why it looks like somebody's paid with his job, because there was no attempt to make things better or improve. I don't know. But Brendan spoke out. It appears that he's been backed. There's been change at the SFA. Head of refereeing stepped down. Will that be the only person to go? We'll wait and see who else was involved and how that happens. But this is right. Refs are going to make mistakes, but if other sports can release audio, they can have it in real time in the game. There is that. We've got the technology. There's no way that you can go, look, here's the check. Did that ball bounce off one of his teammates at close range and bounce onto his arm? If it did, it's not a penalty. Let me check for that. Oh, yeah, that happened in the video. So we better not get the penalty. It could easily be done. It's the fear of scrutiny and the fear of transparency that you've got to kind of go, well, what are you frightened of? What is it that we can't know? Would we not understand that somebody's made a genuine mistake? Would we not understand a referee who's been through so many levels, his category A, he's passed all these tests, momentarily forgetting the rules on a number of occasions of seasons to favour one team? But hard to understand. But at least you're going, right, but that's it. That guy's just forgetful when it comes to these games.
And football's now part of the entertainment industry, Lawrence, and that process, right? I mean, Jim Orr talks about it quite a lot. When he's at the game, he can't even see the screen. So for the paying punter in the stadium, the process is not part of the entertainment of the day. They've tried to make it part of that process on the TV, and I just think it would add into that as well in the aftermath of a game. It brings back that old story you were saying, you can't call a referee incompetent. Remember the Bertie Old story to Tiny Morton? What have I thought? What have I thought it? Oh well, couldn't really do nothing about that. Pete McGee, audio deleted by whom? Every action on a system leaves a digital trail, so finding out whose finger was on the button would be easy. Pete, you're spot on, and I'm sure that will all be found out in the internal investigation that would follow if that did happen. John Buchan, let me guess, there is a so-called Glasgow Derby coming up. Yeah, there is. And hiking and biking Scotland. It's not incompetence, it's unconscious bias, which exists in all walk of life. And I think we've got to just accept that. Big Dom, I'm still wondering, is this Dom Mackay? Is this his burner account, Chris? What do you think?
Wish it was.
Could be. Lawrence, you were there. We got a text message saying, well done. You were there. You were in the taxi.
Yes.
When we won that award in London.
Yeah, that's right. I said he came. Listen, we're talking about SFA changing. You know, that's Celtics tried some changing it. It didn't last too long. And well, you might be cynical to think maybe Celtic stepped up at this point to, they were feeling a bit of pressure, and it's certainly taking a wee bit of pressure off the Celtic board and change that's expected there. But
it has, Lawrence. But again, that's one of the things that I think that we've been a bit frustrated with, the fact that they're toothless tigers at times. It's like when you really need to go toe-to-toe with the authorities, do it. And do it because you've got a fan base there. And it's not just because we're demanding it, but we're paying into this game and we want to make sure that it's scrutinised. If there is any doubt whatsoever or suspicion about what's going on. Big Dom, it might be Big Dom Mackay. If we win the league this season, it will be Brendan's finest achievement in the face of massive adversity. There's two schools of thought on this one, Chris. And if you listen to Kevin Graham on the bulletin yesterday, you know what camp he's in, right, when it comes to Brendan. I'm somewhere in the middle here because I think Dom makes a good point in that there has been a lot of mitigating circumstances that have piled up. And people might say, listen, he's the biggest paid manager in the club's history. He's this level of manager. He should be able to deal with all that. But it has been a season where a lot of that's been out of his control, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, we make some assumptions on that because again, there's a lack of transparency from what's going on inside the club. And that's something we're always, as fans, we're always having to deal with. So we base it on what we can see. We base it on performances on the pitch, results, obviously, perceived performance in transfer windows, managers' body language, everything. We all become experts in trying to read behaviours and read signs. I think this season, Brendan Rodgers was hired after being really successful here, didn't leave under the best of circumstances. Quite open and honest in the spirit of transparency, I was quite pleased to see him coming back. I like many people, I wasn't happy when he left. I thought leaving when he did, when there was so much at stake, and with the 10-in-a-row season coming up, was not what I would like to see a Celtic manager do. But at the same time, I can understand the reasons. He was going to what, undeniably is the biggest league in the world, even if he wasn't going to one of the bigger clubs. So I understood his reasons well, without necessarily agreeing with them. But when he came back, I thought, well, great. As a man who knows how to get success at Celtic, he's done it before. He brought some cracking players to the club as well. He went, an invincible season. There were more positives than negatives for me, and I can alleviate the grudge of saying, well, he left our club. I can forgive that if he comes back and he brings us more success. And it looked as though he was going to do it at a canter. We were 8 points clear at one point, but then you're getting all the stories of he's not getting the players in, summer recruitment on the face of it didn't look great at the time, was subsequently proven not to be great because most of the players we signed we've barely seen. Looked like we had a chance to rectify it in January, didn't happen. Although I think we are potentially starting to see some of the benefits of Nicholas Kuhn, but we're still down to one recognised left back at the club and one first team ready goalkeeper. So we can't view that as a success even with the immediate recent performances of Kuhn. And you're saying, well, how much of that is down to Rodgers? How much of that is down to factors, out with his control, such as a very separate siloed recruitment department? Well, next thing you know, we see Mark Law and one of the recruitment team leave. So that seems to be indicating that, performances have led to that departure. So, yeah, I would say if he brings success this year, at an absolute minimum the league, but hopefully the League and Cup double, on the surface of it, it looks as though he's overcome quite a bit of adversity, and he's got a very difficult season over the line. And look, without going into detail on Rangers, but they reacted to bad performances and brought in a manager. Whatever your opinion of them, they are. I don't know how good their performances are. I don't spend a lot of time watching them, but they are getting results. They did their job in terms of trying to get close on the title race and actually turn it into a title race. So we have had to react to that as well, and now we are starting to hopefully, and Kev will have a go at me for saying this, but I do think we are gaining a bit of momentum in terms of our results. Performances are still up and down and a bit Jekyll and Hyde, but I think we're getting momentum in terms of results, and we are now, despite the fact we are now chasing, if you take into account games in hand, I still think we are better positioned to go on and win this title. And I do think you have to give credit where it's due. The manager has to be a part of that. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that he'd be my best choice for going forward. But I think if he wins League and Cup double, give him another season, another recruitment window, and see what we can do next year. But yeah, I would say it's an achievement. I would.
We've got a couple of suggestions for your bar. Your name of your bar, Lawrence. First one comes in from John. The Vatican. That could work. There's also one from Stevie 5G. A watering hole. Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant. Who's the snitch? We have to accept unconscious bias because you say so. I'm not sure who you're saying that to, but no, I think we've got to accept that it exists. And I think the sooner the association and in this country admits that it exists and accepts that it exists, they can do something about it. And I've always suggested what they do about it is what Bill was saying here, Bill McCabe. If it is shown that referees support either club or any club, then they should not be involved. I'm talking Hibs, Hearts, Partick Thistle, whoever it is, in any game they're playing in, including VAR. And I know that the argument then is that they could be refereeing a game that could impact their team in some way. Yeah, there's secondary impacts. I get it. I absolutely get it, Bill. And I think that simply do it. Swear your allegiance. If you have been a season ticket holder or you followed a football club, tell us, and we'll make sure that this suspicion and this dubiety does not exist. Easy enough to do it.
The admission that it exists in Scotland, they can't even countenance the possibility that it might exist. Mm-hmm. I know it's not possible that it exists. I'm like, well, come on, behave yourself. Listen, and back to Brendan, I think it's either Celtic or Rangers that's going to win the league. But I mean, who's he out of our first team squad who's been fit all season? Joe Hart and I don't know, Matt O'Reilly.
Liam Scales until this week. Yep.
Yeah. So he's had that adversity to overcome. Has the recruitment been good enough? Listen, we're selling players at 25 million. He was a £6 million player when we bought him, and we're replacing with a £1 million guy.
You got a hard time last week. You got a hard time last week for calling our signings £1 million players. There was only one that came in at £1 million, Lawrence. So I'm just pointing that out before it ends up in the comment section.
But it'll be a while before Young's a £6 million player. Never mind a £21 million player if he ever gets there. So, but we've got an expectation in him replacing Jota. You've got to be realistic. The recruitment brief you're reading, this is a brief that Matt Law was given. They've got to be under a certain age, not looking for a lot of money, preferably have played international football. There's not a lot of players kind of fall into those parameters, and to expect him to come in and replace somebody like Jota, you're not going to get the same level of performance, are you? Yeah, Kuhn's started to look good. See, Brendan spoke about he's getting back up to his normal weight. Mm-hmm. It could be good for the run-in. We're starting to get players back and fit.
Imagine having to get back up to your normal weight. Imagine that. When's the last time Ulster had to get back up to a normal weight? When you've got You've
I'd
got
love
to
to have
thank
the
goodness.
I'd
I
love to have the
know.
opportunity to go below my weight and get back up. That'd be great. If I could get below my weight for my holiday, now I'll work on getting back up.
Exactly. Aye.
No, but I think it'd be a brilliant achievement by Brendan. Would it be success though? I mean, what would we have said success was at the beginning of the season? Doing well in Europe. You look across the city, you can't deny, they get a great result against Benfica away. They went out narrowly at home to them. You can't deny that their European results have certainly have been better than ours, albeit in the secondary competition.
I was going to say, is it not the case, Lawrence, that maybe where we are as a nation, that is more suited to our level in terms of European competition?
Well, the only thing you're able to put on the board, kind of bed robber win. I don't know, mate. There's other smaller clubs seem to have ambitions and do better in Europe than us. But for me, you've got to be at least competing to come out of the group. We were nowhere near second place, mate, and we're miles off third. It's. So for me, success would have been to do better in Europe, and I don't think we did. Whether it's recruitment, losing half of Angie's team, injuries. But as a football club, everybody gets injuries and you sell players. And the very nature of selling type of club we are, we're not going to sell a player for 20 million and buy one for 30 million. We're going to be replacing them with somebody who's worse. Because if we could find a guy at is it 1.25 or 1.5 million to replace a £21 million player, why would they have given us 20 for Jota and not just went and bought that boy at £1.5 million if he was as good, and saved themselves a bit of cash. I think recruitment thing's a hard thing, that we're always going to be buying in people who aren't at the level of those that left.
You said worse, and I think what I would say is you can get them earlier in the development. So Jota, where he was when we signed him compared to the Jota that left for £25 million, what we should have been doing at that point is looking for somebody at that level at that stage of their career, Lawrence. And I think that, see, when the criteria that you're talking about, age level, wage bracket, etc., I think what's happened there is we've had a recruitment team who don't have the facilities in place, where it's more of a case of picking up the phone or sending out that mailer to say to all the agents that the heads of these departments are involved with, to say, give me all your players within that category for right wing, and them getting a collection of players, and it's all on recommendations. I think you could find the player. I think the player is out there, but we don't have it in place with regards to data, using data-driven recruitment. And we've spoken about that. I think if you scoured the global market, you would find a player. And you know what? You'd need to be at the top end. What was the bracket? 5 million. Had to be under 5 million. Is that right?
Yeah.
I think that was a criteria. I think there is a player at the stage of their career at that price who is out there, but we've not looked for them properly. We've just went out there and said, listen, give me a recommendation. And the agents have thrown in a pile of players and they've just not been the right fit. That's what it strikes me as being. And I think, as well as changing the figures within these two departments, Mark Lowell and his cohort, I think you need to change the whole recruitment process. I think we need to use data better. It cannot be on recommendation. And then if you're looking for a worse player, there will be worse, but hopefully only because in terms of the development, they're not quite at that level of the guy.
Listen, that's part of the reason Brendan's here. He's got a reputation of developing young players and making them better. He's the right. You'd want somebody with that track record coming in to a club that's got a model that says, well, look, we buy players young, we promise them what we'll sell them on. And hopefully Brendan can do that. I'd say success. Danny Kelly's looked great in the games, So Brendan's starting to give, put a bit of pathway there. I mean, recruitment, were they responsible for getting rid of some of the players that had been about too long? Because we did have a bloated squad. We do need to bring it down. So I suppose that's been successful. We've moved some players on. But Danny Kelly's definitely been a success. Hopefully he signs a contract. Hopefully it's not too late to keep him, like it was with Ben Doak. We've got to put something in that gets a balance that we can get these young guys game time. See if they're up to the mark. Because he hasn't been overawed at that age.
No.
He's not looked out of place in the park. I don't see why he's not in the squad every week now. 2 games, 1 goal was he over his first 2 games. So But for me, we're looking for Brendan to do more of that going forward, and then maybe that means we're spending the money we've got. We can spend more on who we bring in, because we're not having to spread it thin. Because we've
Spread it
got
better.
what was it, 10 players, 11 players, something? We brought in
11 players. Yeah, two loanees, but 11 players, and I think 3 actually when you it was Nat Phillips, Bernardo, and Ida on loan, but 11 players into the first team squad, Lawrence. And you look at the starting lineup there at the weekend, and only one was a summer signing. It was Bernardo, and he's on loan. So yeah, great discussions today, guys. Over 1,700 joining us for the Tuesday bulletin. I've really enjoyed it. I love a ding dong with Lawrence on a Tuesday, and we've still to name your bar, Lawrence.
You did it.
I tell you, I'm looking at some of these names. They're absolutely brilliant. I don't know how you're going to choose some of these names that are coming through the chat.
They're superb. They're brilliant.
Really, good job, boys. That's
the creative mind of a Celtic supporter. That's what it comes down to. Thank you all for getting involved. If you want to come and be part of a German documentary film, no, that type of film, a German documentary film on the rivalry between Celtic and Rangers and other big derbies worldwide, then come to the Celtic State of Mind event with Paddy McCourt. It's going to be a cracking night anyway, but obviously there's the added incentive of being part of a film, probably getting interviewed, etc. So thank you all for supporting what we do. And the only other thing I would say to you, come back to us tomorrow at 12:30, where we'll have Big John Hughes and others talking Celtic for an hour. All that's left for me to say thank you to Lawrence Connolly and Chris McElwain for joining me on a Celtic State of Mind.